Hi everyone. This is the game Chaz versus Athi. Played term 4, round 1, 13th of October. Let's dive into it. So we got e4, e5, knight f3, d6. Okay, this is called the Philidor's defense, and it's got a reputation of being pretty passive. It's not ideal. I think black should play something like knight c6. I think is a far better move. d6, you're just trapping your own bishop in, and you're sort of going to be left with a passive bishop for most of the game. The best way for white to take advantage of this is just to play d4 straight away, put that pawn under immediate pressure, and yeah, it's just if black trades, which he usually does, white just ends up with the only center pawn and a knight bang in the middle of the board. Very, very strong position for white. What did white do? No, bishop c4. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that move. I just think d4 is a little more direct. And then bishop g4. What do I say about this move? I mean, there's a principle, kind of an unwritten principle in chess, that you should develop your king side before you develop your queen side. If you bring this bishop out too early, it's sort of, you can get into a bit of trouble, and your king side, your king kind of gets stranded. It means your king takes that one extra move to get to safety. So most of the time it's harmless. You can actually get away with this. I just think black should play a much stronger move like knight f6. Now with this pin, you've got to be a bit careful as well, because pins can get turned around on you and turned into discovered attacks very quickly. Let me show you something called Legal's Mate. Now let's say white were to castle here and black were to play knight c6, and then white were to play this. All too often I see moves like knight d4 get played, and the idea is quite simple. You're attacking the pin. You're attacking the pin piece twice with the bishop and the knight, and that's going to cause these pawns to be doubled, and this whole king side, white's entire king side, gets ruined. The problem with this move is white can play a move like this. Now, it looks a bit weird at first. You think, well, what's he doing? He's just giving up his queen, and that's kind of white's plan. If black just says free queen, black gets a rather large shock. When this bishop takes the pawn check, there's only one move for black. He has to play his king here. And then knight to d5 is checkmate, and that's called Legal's Mate. The two knights in the middle and the bishop on f7 and the king checkmate in the middle. I've actually won a few games of this myself, in blitz chess, admittedly, but it's pretty cool little mate that you need to know of. But it really does highlight how a pin can be turned around and turned into a discovered attack very quickly. Another way that this happens, probably a bit more common, is let's say black played a move like this now, and then white played, it doesn't really matter, knight here, and black played queen b6. Okay, in this position, white's got this idea. Bishop takes f7 check. And the idea is to lure the king to a square where you can deliver a knight check. And the pin has now been turned into a discovered attack. King gets out of danger, the queen takes the bishop, and white's just won a pawn. So whenever you're pinning a knight like this, you do have to be careful. You have to make sure that it can't be turned around on you. In this case, there is no way to turn it around. And I think what white did was actually very strong. White just simply played h3, and that causes this bishop a bit of discomfort. I mean, the bishop gets chased all the way back here. It might find it's on a bad square there, because white's just going to play d3, and this bishop's going to be just hitting nothing for the whole game. And if the bishop takes a knight, well, white will gain a tempo. We get his queen out and threaten a mate all in one, and that's actually what happened. Bishop takes, queen takes. And now white's got the queen and the bishop. He's threatening mates straight away. And knight f6 isn't possible because black will lose a pawn. Black has to play something like queen d7. And I'll show you what will happen. Well, actually, we'll see, because the move played was knight f6, which is a blunder. And lucky for black, white missed this. And it's a bit surprising that he did miss it, because it's a pretty common idea when this queen comes to f3 early and this bishop is gone. The queen should swing across to b3. And the bishop is threatening to take this pawn with check, and the queen is threatening to take the b7 pawn. So that's effectively a queen fork. The queen simultaneously, backs up the bishop, threatening to take on f7, and threatens to jump in and take on b7 at the same time. And that's just a free pawn for white. Black doesn't have time to grab this pawn at any stage. He has to deal with this check first. Yeah, if he does take it, he just loses horribly to a simple check. He can't play king there because queen e6 would be mate. So the king would have to go here, then you go check, and then king here, then check, and then king back, and then grab the knight, and white's just easily winning. He's a piece up. Okay, so white missed that. He just simply castled. And black then played bishop e7. That's okay. c3, yeah, not bad. Castles, yep. d4. Knight c6. My first thoughts when I see knight c6 is that it was a positional mistake. That's my gut instinct. Let's see if I can work out why my gut instinct doesn't like this. And also, what happened to the... Yeah, Stockfish doesn't like it either. As you can see, if you can see it, white is about 0.4 of a pawn up, and then after knight c6, white is considered to be a pawn up, according to the engine. Now, the reason why knight c6 kind of just left a bad feeling in my stomach is that the knight just doesn't have any good squares to go to. Like, after it goes to c6, if it just gets chased away with d5, where's it going? It'll have to head straight back home again. So it just looks a bit vulnerable. So after d5, if the knight were to come out to here, a simple bishop d3 and the threat of b4 trapping the knight is very hard to stop. You'd have to play something like b6. But then after pawn up, knight back here, where's the knight going now? It can't go to c5 or a5. And even if it does go to d8 one day, it can't go anywhere from d8 because both e6 and c6 is covered. This is an example of an incredibly bad knight. So yeah, so after d5, the knight will have to go back home. And you could argue that because the center is closed, wasting time sending the knight home like this is perfectly fine. Maybe that argument is okay here. I'm a bit concerned about, yeah. I don't know, just looking at it, when I looked at this position, I just thought the knight belonged on d7, and I'm pretty sure it does. If the knight just goes to d7 here, there's no d5 nonsense going on. If d5 gets played, the c5 square opens up for the knight, and yeah, it defends the pawn like this, and black can look to play something like c6 and then queen b6, and he has a decent plan for playing in the center. With the pawn on c6 and the queen on b6, he can then go for something like d5 a little later on. So knight c6, I think, is it's a bit of a positional mistake because the knight does not really belong on that square. White played bishop e3. That looks fine to me. I think I prefer d5, but just developing has to be good. Queen d7. Queen d7. Yeah, now the queen's sitting on the square the knight wants to be sitting on. It's kind of it's very messy for black. Going all the way back here, black really needed to have a very long think as to where his pieces should sit so that they're the most effective. And a knight sitting on d7 and a queen on b6 with the pawn on c6 just seemed like a pretty straightforward plan. Pretty good plan. But when you just put your pieces, charge your pieces out onto vacant squares like this, you got to ask yourself what the next step is. What's my plan now? And it's very hard to see what black's plan actually is. He can't come through the center. There's just too much guarding d5, and e5 could look a bit iffy. There's no obvious pawn break. Maybe he can move this knight away, unpin his f-pawn and go for f5 one day, but that's so easily stopped with a move like g4 anyway. So black is kind of planless. With his pieces, his knight on c6 and his queen on d7, he's planless. Now, normally, if these were beginner players playing this, I would say, well done, you've fully developed your army, good stuff. But this is not just beginners. These are actually quite strong players playing. And I kind of just expect a little bit more in terms of planning. Don't just throw your pieces onto vacant squares and say, look, I'm developing. But actually go that one step further and in your mind, imagine the position afterwards and think, what's my plan going to be? Don't just throw your pieces on squares and then wait and plan later on. Actually plan before you bring your pieces out and work out where the best places to develop your pieces are so that you actually do have a plan. And the knight on d7, the queen on b6, the pawn on c6 gives black a straightforward plan of getting d5 in. With the moves he actually played, black has no plan. And this is very difficult for black to play. Okay, let's just keep going. Knight d2, yeah, I like that. Just completed his development. Now white can follow a plan that involves maybe retreating this bishop and putting the knight onto c4 and putting rooks on the d file and trying to trade on e5 at a very uncomfortable spot. Try and force black to take on d4 if you can. So white's got a step-by-step plan to improve his position. I don't know what black's plan is. Okay, rook a b8. So black decided to, it looks like he's trying to charge this pawn down the board, and that's his plan. Yeah, well done to him. He found a plan in a position where I thought there was no plan. Yeah, the problem is you don't really want this pawn to go any further than b5. Going to b5 is good because it keeps the knight out of c4, but once you get to b4, you open up the c4 square. So I'm not really sure about that. And this knight is still struggling to find squares. I mean, white, if he wants to, can just close the center up with a move like d5, and this knight doesn't have anywhere nice to go. It runs into the same problems I talked about. It doesn't want to sit on a5 because after the bishop retreats, white's threatening to win a knight, and the only way to escape is to b7, where the knight does nothing. And it doesn't want to go to d8 because where's it going from d8? It has no future. It's just a terrible knight for the whole game. So d5 would be a pretty good option here. What did white choose? Rook a d1. Yeah, okay, that's also good. Just put the rook on the same line as the enemy queen, and yeah, just get this bishop out of the way, chuck the knight into c4, and then try and come through the center. I like that idea. b5. Okay, that puts a bit of a twist in white's plan because now the pawn is stopping c4. White played bishop b3, that's good, and then b4. I think this move is a blunder. I think this is actually helping white by just giving him the c4 square. I think what black needed to do was just leave his pawn on b5. Maybe play something like a5 and then, you know, try and go for a4. But I think he had to leave his pawn on b5 to cover the c4 square. The other idea would be to take the queen off this off the d file, you know, something like queen e8 or queen c8. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think of the pros and cons between the two of these. Like the queen going to e8, the reason I think of e8 is I'm thinking of some eventual plan of this king moving, the knight moving, and the pawn, going to f5, and then the queen, no, and then the queen can jump out to maybe g6 and come out to the king's side. If you're going to go c8, yeah, where's the queen going now? Yeah, well, it's off the line. In terms of planning, I prefer e8, but I don't know. Maybe black shouldn't be going for any sort of active plan and just sit there and defend and wait for white to make the play. Sometimes your position's just so bad you can't actively improve it, and you just have to wait. Okay, so b4 was played. Yeah, I think that was a blunder, and yeah, knight c4. Well done, Chaz. Yep, it's good play there. The knight jumped immediately in the hole, and there's the immediate threat of taking this e5 pawn is a pain to deal with. Black either has to take on d4, like I just, whoops, oh, is that what was played? Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Black has to either take the pawn on d4 and give up the center, and white's position's just amazing, or he has to get his queen off this line with a move like queen e8 or queen c8. One of the two. But what he played was d5. That's definitely a blunder. You know, just taking this pawn here just looks really strong for white because this pawn can't take the knight because it's pinned to the queen. Yeah, that's just murdering. After he takes this, the knight will move, and then you take the other one, and you just end up with a couple of connected pass pawns. Oh, no, not pass pawns, just a couple of connected advanced center pawns, and your 2 pawns up, and white is just absolutely smashing black in this position. Moves, yeah, it's just so hard. You know, moves like d6 are coming in at some point soon. White didn't play that though. White played e takes d5, and maybe that's good as well. So this is taking a while I should probably rely on the engine more for analysis rather than using my own eyes. Yeah, it's pretty much what I was looking at. Queen takes d5, and it's pretty much forced queen takes d5. After queen takes queen, maybe, and then grab this pawn here. Grab it with another. But you end up with doubled isolated pawns on the e file. So after like knight takes, d takes, takes. I mean, I think white's only slightly better. I mean, you know, white's material up, but the opposite colored bishops means that the game's most likely drawn. Although this advanced center pawn is stopping black from getting his pieces to good positions. Maybe white can jump into d7. Although black can probably just stop it straight away with a move like this. I don't know. I think queen d5 is annoying. I'm not sure how white was planning on handling this. Of course, if you take here, queen takes there, pawn takes, and I guess that's pretty good actually. The knight has to move somewhere. I don't know where it goes, e8 or h5 or something. But yeah, then the rook can infiltrate into d7. Okay, yeah, this is pretty good. Maybe that's what white was planning. Okay, but black didn't take with the queen. He should have. He didn't. He took with the knight, and that just looks like it loses. Because after you just take this pawn on e5, it's attacked twice and pinned. And white just has to move this knight, and the pin continues. Although, where does he move it? If white just defends the knight like this, how does white actually win this piece? Okay, let's look at the engine. According to the engine, white is 6.5 pawns up after. Oh yeah, just bishop a4. Yeah. How did I not see that? Yeah, that's very strong. That causes problems. Okay, what else has he got? What if he defends it with his rook? Something like this. How do we attack this knight an extra time and just win it? The problem with just moving the knight is it blocks your rook and blocks the pin. The only free spot is a5, but it just gets taken. Stockfish is still suggesting knight a5 anyway. Let's have a look at this. If they take the knight, what happens? Oh yeah, just a simple rook fork attacking the queen and the knight simultaneously. And you get your piece back that way. Yeah, so you can actually move the knight to a5. Interesting. Now, what did black do? Black didn't even try and defend the knight. He went queen e6. Well, that just throws away a piece. That's pretty much game over. Queen takes, rook takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. f6. Yuck. There's a bishop on b3, and I know there's a couple of pieces in the way, but you can't help but feel there's a million tactics in this position that allows white to just win. Yeah, something like rook d7 just looks very, very strong, with the threat of an infinite number of discovered checks coming in next move. Well, infinite, but a few. Quite a fair few. That just looks really good. What did he actually play? Bishop c5. I mean, at this point, white is a piece up, so it's understandable that he just wants to swap pieces off. So black probably needs to play king h8 now and just get his king off that diagonal. What did he do? He went f takes e5. Okay, bye-bye to all your material, pretty much. Knight takes e5. That looks good to me. He can't take it back because rook takes with discovered check. Bishop can take here though, but then check and then grab the knight. No matter what, black is losing a ton of material. What did he do? He went knight takes e5. Well, that's just, yeah, just bang, check. King moves, grab the bishop, and game over. So let's see what happened next. Oh, why are my arrow keys not working? Oh, okay, my computer locked up or something. Okay, rook f8. Why is black swapping rooks? No, you're 2 bishops down. Do not swap pieces. You have to keep the pieces on the board as much as you can. When you're up in material, swap pieces. When you're down in material, swap pawns. Okay, rook f8. Yeah, that's just good. Just double the rooks. And black is trading. That's just throwing the game away by trading like that. h6, rook takes. There's not really much more to this now. Check, check. Oh, this looks nice. Check. Lovely. There's a nice little maneuver at the end there. I like it. Really good. Just check, king here, check. The only way out is g6. Check. There's two moves, g8 and h8. He goes check, king there, check. Yeah, the only way out is to play rook e5. Then of course bishop takes e5 is mate. That's a good little ending there. Oh well, I'm gonna stop here. I'm past the 20-minute mark. Yeah, I think a few lessons to be learnt there in that game. But black really just threw it away by throwing away a piece and then yeah, and then throwing away more material by opening up that line, the bishop to his king. It was really just a game that was over with two blunders. Most games of chess only require one or two blunders before the game's over. You need to eliminate these sorts of blunders from your play. Yeah. Okay, well done to white. I'm going to stop it there. I hope you all learned something. Goodbye.